The party's over. They say that all good things must end.
Or in our case, start, as this is the beginning of a Press Pros Magazine Monday Huddle. I'm Bruce Hooley. That's Willie Nelson singing, and that is Sonny Fulks in his new blue glasses tonight. So you look sharp, Mr. Fulks. Welcome to Press Pros Monday Huddle.
It's always good to be around, and it's good to be sharp, I guess. So here we are, and can you believe it's almost August?
I can believe it's almost August. This summer has gone by very, very quickly, and I'm excited about that because we are getting close to football season. I believe the official start of practice is August the 2nd, which is this coming Monday, and we will have schools all over all the leagues that we cover going at it hard in organized workouts, and my guess is they're already going at it hard in voluntary workouts, that knowing the dedication of the teams in our area and how they all have designs on a state championship, they're already going at it hard.
I would say some of them have been going at it hard for 6 weeks. They've just been doing it under the cover of darkness or something other.
Yeah.
But it's an important time, and, it all starts on Monday with practice, and after that, it's all football all the time. And, I was out today in Mac Country up in Delphus and over in St. Henry and some places like that. So, yeah, the excitement's palpable. People are out there talking about football, and they're anxious to get the annual iconic ritual underway.
Who do you think has the biggest shoes to fill this year, Sonny, when we talk about some of the teams that we cover from our legacy coverage area? We're not going to get into too much of comparatives in Central Ohio right now, but when you think of, obviously at Coldwater, you've got an opening at quarterback. Miles Blasingame did a great job last year. They're going to try to plug his brother in there, are they not? Marcel Blasingame. We've got some really outstanding quarterbacks coming back. Lane Sarver at Tri-Village comes to mind. The young man at Arcanum that you profiled a while back. Fort Loramie had an awful lot of seniors last year. Take me through who you think has big shoes to fill this year on the football side.
Well, obviously, the first name that comes to mind is your reigning state champion. That would be New Bremen in our case in Division 7. They lose Mitchell Hayes, one of those quarterbacks that was, again, a leader of that team last year, caught fire after that Coldwater game that we talked about, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago, and kind of just put them on his back and took him right through the end of Warren JFK for the Division 7 title. You want to know who's got the biggest shoes to fill? I think the New Bremen Cardinals, because they had a big senior class leave. There's never a guarantee that you have ready replacements for that kind of experience and that kind of talent. And again, Mitchell Hayes was a special talent. He was a kid that was really good in at least two sports, in baseball and football. He was obviously a leader on the field, somebody that his teammates rallied about, believed in, and fearless to compete. And that's what you have to have. So I'd say those are really big shoes to fill when you're the reigning state champion and you don't have ready answers. Now, you mentioned Coldwater. They're the reigning state champion too.
Yes, they are.
But they also have a history and a legacy of having, the answer to the question, who's the next man up? Well, Chip Otten has developed a culture and a program there for years where he has ready replacements. I've seen them even last year. I think in that Coldwater game, they're one of their starting linebackers or running backs went down with a knee injury or a broken leg. They didn't miss a beat. They went 15-0 last year to win the Division 6 title. So I'm not sure New Bremen has that kind of culture yet. I'm not sure very many teams in Ohio football have that kind of culture yet. But, if you just ask me point blank, I would say number one would be New Bremen. Number two, I think we've mentioned Piqua here for a couple of weeks off and on, and I think the way they finished last year with a very disappointing loss to Anderson High School out of Cincinnati in the final minute of that game, a game which they actually had won and were ahead and let it slip through their hands. I think there's some shoes there to fill. Maybe not physical shoes, but the kind that come from between your ears. How you learn how to win a tough game. And what do you take away from that game, if anything? And you hope they do. That comes back this year and gives you an advantage going forward into the 2021 season.
By the way, speaking of New Bremen and the Cardinals and their head coach, Chris Schmidt, we want to congratulate Coach Schmidt today, who received the annual Paul Brown Coaching Award from none other than the legendary coach's son, Mike Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. And with that, I believe, comes a $10,000 contribution from the Cincinnati Bengals to the New Bremen Athletic Department. So Chris Schmidt, who did a phenomenal job. I believe New Bremen had won 6 games in the 5 years before Chris Schmidt arrived at New Bremen, and they won the state championship in 5 years. So he did a phenomenal job there at New Bremen, and their win over Warren JFK last year in the state playoffs came in very, very dominant fashion. So a nice check delivered to New Bremen today, and another great accomplishment for Chris Schmidt, who I remember from talking to him last year on our Huddle show in the aftermath of that state championship weekend, was on cloud 9, and understandably so.
Yeah, and you know, that's one of the really good stories we wrote about all last fall and over the winter immediately after the state tournament, is how that can happen, how you can catch lightning in a bottle. We've seen it happen before. We saw it happen Fort Recovery in 2014 when they won their only title. We saw it in 2014 when Garen Stokes and Minster won their second title, but second in 3 years, when they beat Kirtland in such a dramatic fashion. So, you know, it's one of the things that makes high school football so special is things like that happen, and all you need is some dynamic leadership to emerge on the field. Mm-hmm. Obviously, those kids are well coached. They're prepared by their coaches and a game plan and all that. But still, when it comes out there, and you know, because you're an old athlete, I'm an old athlete, you know that when it comes down to making a play and making a difference in the game and the outcome of the game, that rests solely on the shoulders of the kids. And when you have a Mitchell Hayes, when you have a Josh Nixon back then in 2014, when you have the kids that Marion Local has had over the years to win 11 titles, there's no replacement for that. It's a special story, and I'm not sure anybody has ever been able to describe it accurately and adequately. That term that coaches like to use, you got to learn how to win.
Yep. Well, there was out a win. Ryan Day. And the Ohio State over the week, well, late in the week, talking at the Big Ten Football Media Days. Our Mark Snyder profiled it on PressProsMagazine.com. The headline comment coming out of that, of course, was Jim Harbaugh of Michigan saying that if they couldn't beat Ohio State, he would die trying. A lot of people made fun of that. I understand why. I just don't know what else you expect Harbaugh to say. I mean, he's not going to say that, yeah, they're so far ahead of us, we got no hope. Even though that's what I would have said, not if I was Harbaugh. But that story's on PressProsMagazine.com under the college tab and then under the Ohio State tab. But what did you think of Harbaugh's comments? And Sonny, for Ohio State not to win the Big Ten would be such a giant upset in my mind. I can't even fathom it happening.
Your question to me was, what do I think of Harbaugh's comments?
Yeah.
Fluff.
What else is he going to say?
What else is he going to say? He's got to say something. What people don't know, and you know that I was in Michigan on April the 12th, 13th, and 14th for baseball. I was in Ann Arbor in Ray Fisher Stadium. All the ushers that worked the game there worked the game in the big house across the street for football. And I asked a number of people there, what do you think about Ohio State and Michigan? And without reservation, every one of them went, they're so far ahead of us, words can't, we're not in that league. Yeah. We just don't compete with them anymore in football the way we are now. And I said, do you think it's coaching? And they said, I don't know. Do you think it's athletes? I don't know. Do you think it's reputation? Do you think the shine is off the Michigan apple? Obviously it is. Now, this is what people who like to thump their chests about Ohio State and Michigan, the rivalry, don't understand. They also don't understand, too, for as big a deal as it is here in Ohio and Michigan. One guy told me, he says, our first and foremost here is, hey, we got to beat Michigan State. That's embarrassing when we lose to Michigan State. So if that answers your question about, I think Jim Harbaugh knows that. He has to know that before anybody else. We're just not in that league right now with athletes and confidence to go head to head with Ohio State and expect to win.
Yeah, no, they are not in Ohio State's league figuratively. They are literally. And the question is, will they still be in Ohio State's league literally, but be in a different league? Because we now have confirmation today that Oklahoma and Texas are joining the Southeastern Conference. It's 4 years away, 2025. But this is, to me, the time where Ohio State needs to look seriously at accepting the overtures from the SEC to join that league, because the most telling aspect of the Texas and Oklahoma departure for the SEC is not that they left the Big 12 hanging, but that they never even called the Big 10 to inquire about membership and seek a better deal. And what does everybody seek when they're making a big deal? Leverage. If you're playing Big 10 against SEC, you presumably would have leverage. Instead, Texas and Oklahoma came to the table, hat in hand. We want to get out of the Big 12. We want to join the SEC. We have no interest in the Big 10. The Big 10 had no idea that was coming. And I think the reason why Oklahoma and Texas didn't approach the Big 10 and the reason why the Big 10 had no idea this is happening was the same reason, and that's a failure of leadership at the top of the Big 10 and Kevin Warren. He has to be connected enough to know that schools that are plum additions like Texas and Oklahoma are thinking of leaving. He has to get in front of that and try to make a case to get him into the Big 10. He can't be caught flat-footed, and he was definitely caught flat-footed late last week when that news started to come out. And the fact that Oklahoma and Texas didn't even call the Big 10 to me is a reflection on what they think of the Big 10's future with Kevin Warren leading it.
Well, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, check the boxes, A, B, and C. You're dead on with that. So good on you. I think people are so tired of this. I mean, they're just worn out from how much is enough money, especially when it comes to Texas. Because I don't know if you read my column today. Texas is the richest Division I school in America. They've got, they're going to have to buy themselves out of their Big 12 obligation, which is about $75 to $80 million, give or take a couple. And, that's a lot of money. To you and me, Bruce, that's a lot of money. To the fan base in Buckeye Nation or Michigan Nation, that is a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
But in Texas, in Austin, Texas, it's tip change.
Yeah.
It's not big money there. It's what you have to do to get to be where you want. And, sadly, as I wrote today, where people are going to realize this is that if you're a college football fan in the SEC or the Big 10 already, and I just shared with you before we came on live, you go to Ticketmaster and look at dynamic pricing for an Ohio State football ticket this year. And I give you the example that I just shared with you for the Maryland game on Ticketmaster. If you want to sit in the top of CDAC around a 30-yard line, they're asking $299. Now, there is some point where you literally price yourself out of the market. Mm-hmm. And at college football, as I quoted Mac Engel from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I have a lot of respect for him. He's an excellent writer, and typically somebody like you and him, they're spot on when they look. Unlike Kevin Warren, they have their ear to the rail. And when he says this is the first step for that super league that wants all the money, they want to command all of the money. I don't know how palatable that is to the person who's always said, I'm a college football fan and I saved up all year to spend $400 for season tickets and BDEC. You know what I mean? There comes a point where people are just so disgusted with the cost of the product. It doesn't matter who it is or how much or how good it is.
Well, you mentioned that. When is that tipping point that you've priced yourself out of the market. I do think it's telling that Ohio State's season ticket base, excluding student tickets, which really don't count because they're not full price, the season ticket base this year for Ohio State football is at its lowest that anyone ever remembers, 43,000. Now, they will not have a problem filling the stadium because they're going to be ranked in the top 5 all year. If they lose to Oregon, they probably won't drop down below 5, and they'll rehabilitate themselves and get back up there against the Big Ten, and they'll be a playoff team this year, I believe. But if Ohio State were to have an 8-4 season and to not have prospects where the next year it was all but assured that they would be a top 5 team, I think that season ticket base could precipitously drop even more because the pandemic gave people a forced taste of how they can consume Ohio State football without investing all the money and all the time that it takes to actually be on site for a Saturday afternoon game in the Horseshoe.
Yeah, you can't blame this on COVID. The 43,000 number, the low, you can't blame that on COVID. Again, there comes a point where you have to ask yourself about anything that you buy. Can I afford this anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a good investment?
Yeah.
I just bought a refrigerator this afternoon. You got to have a refrigerator. So honestly, it doesn't matter what it costs if you need it, because I only buy one about every 21.4 years. So you can amortize that out. That's not the case with football tickets to watch Ohio State play Maryland for $300. Because if Maryland's $300, how much will Michigan be? If they join the SEC, how much will Alabama be? Who's going to pay $1,000? Not that it will be, but at the rate it's going, who's going to pay that kind of check to watch college football? It's not sound economics. I don't know what T. Boone Pickens would say because he's gone now, but he was a good economist, and that's the concern that I have. I asked Randy Walker that one time. You knew Randy Walker.
I did
when he was at Troy, and I knew him when he was a coach at Northwestern. And I asked him one time in an interview, did you ever think you'd see the day when a college football ticket would cost $50 at that time, face value? And he smiled and he said to me, it's not my job. It's not my business. My business is just to coach football. But he said, to answer your question, no. Well, that was a decade ago, and look where we are now.
Randy, who sent us an earlier Facebook message noting that contribution from the Bengals to New Bremen for $10,000 today, says, since you're talking about leagues, why are there still independent high school football teams, and why don't they join a league? Are there advantages to being independent versus a league? Well, we have an independent team in our area this year in Fort Loramie. So, but I don't know that is Fort Loramie's decision as much as it was a decision foisted upon them by, or was it their decision to leave the cross-county conference?
It was their decision when the cross-county conference disbanded. They were invited to be a full member, all sports, in the Three Rivers Conference. And they said, nay, we can't leave our basketball and volleyball traditions and other sports outside of football. We can't leave those traditions in the Shelby County League, so we'll go independent. Randy, to answer your question, yeah, it has all the advantages in the world to belong to a league, because this year and next year, Fort Loramie is traveling all over the state of Ohio to find a football game. And it comes some point where your fan base just doesn't want to drive to Licking County to watch them play Newark Catholic. That's a long drive there and a long drive back. And a steady diet of that really begins to erode your football culture. So it is to their benefit, soon. And there's some obvious league affiliations around here that might present themselves. Three Rivers Conference is one of them. The MAC would be another one if they could work out a deal there. But they don't want football-only people anymore. They want the whole boat. They want basketball. They want volleyball. They want spring sports. They want everything. So that's a situation as far as independence and league. The biggest thing about an independent is you got to go wherever the game is, and that can become very expensive.
Speaking of that, there is one move in my mind, and only one move for the Big Ten to make in reaction to the SEC adding Oklahoma and Texas. Now is the time to extend another offer to Notre Dame, who has turned that overture down every single time. But Notre Dame last year got a taste of playing in a league. It played football in the ACC last year because of the pandemic. Notre Dame now in the expanded 12-team playoff will not be eligible for a top 4 seed as an independent. So if they would join the Big Ten, they would be then eligible for a top 4 seed as a league champion. And I believe if the Big Ten asks Notre Dame and Notre Dame says no, which I think there's a better chance Notre Dame would say yes this time than ever before. But I think if the Big Ten asks Notre Dame again and Notre Dame says no, then the Big Ten needs to do what you and I are both familiar with, knowing how many Amish people we know, Sonny. They need to shun Notre Dame, and they need to say, you're shunned. Our teams will no longer play your teams in football. No Purdue, no Michigan State, no Michigan, no Ohio State. We do not play you. You are shunned.
Well,
you agree or not?
I don't know if I can agree or not. I don't know why they turned the Big Ten down when they turned them down the last time, because look where we are. Look what we're talking about now. Somebody has to have some foresight in business, in every business, and football certainly is a business. Look down the road and see what's coming.
Yep.
Get the best deal you can get, especially if it's geographically accommodating to your fan base, which certainly the Big Ten would be. They're right in the heart of Big Ten country with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. On those years when Iowa's as good as they are, that's pretty good football. It would behoove you to maybe like a Fort Laramie or some other independent high school to find a good home for your brand. And if they want to say shun, take your chances. Go ahead and do it and take your chances.
Randy has another question. He says, even if Notre Dame accepted, wouldn't it be like 5 years before they'd be in since school's schedule so many years out now? Randy, I don't understand why they have to schedule so far out. I think that's silly. They'd jump out of contracts all the time. Ohio State had a contract with TCU, a home and home a couple of years ago. TCU didn't want to come to Columbus. They bailed. Ohio State ended up playing them just the one time in Dallas. So any contract can be signed. Any contract can be broken. And in that case, Notre Dame is in the ACC in every sport but football. But I think that could be managed without too much of a problem. All right, Mr. Fulks.
TCU didn't want to come to Ohio State because there wasn't enough money guaranteed.
That is correct. Now, we have talked about conference expansion. We also wanted to talk about teams changing leagues. Let's talk about a team changing its name. The Cleveland Indians, enjoy them while you can, because they will not be the Indians next year. They will be the Cleveland Guardians. They tried to pick a name that would be absolutely, totally inoffensive to everyone. And so it has a bit of a Marvel feel, Guardians of the Galaxy. They have 2 big, weird statues on a bridge leading across the river toward Progressive Field that they say are the Guardians of Traffic. They tried to sell us on Tom Hanks voicing over the 5-minute video, which was very well done video, but I did not know that it was Tom Hanks' voice at the time I was listening to it. Guardians. I have a take on this, but I will yield to you, Mr. Baseball, for the floor initially.
If it were my decision to make, and I was trying not to offend anyone, if I'm in the baseball business, the people that I would want to offend least would be baseball fans.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, they've been there since 1915 as the Indians. That's an iconic American League brand. And to come up with something like the Guardians, which I don't know if you read my column today, but I use the term like it or not. I mean, it just certainly has a certain symbolism of something you buy to prevent disease rather than something to promote baseball.
Yeah.
Honestly, that is an embarrassing nickname for a team in the American League as old and as long and with the history and the legacy of the Cleveland Indians. And Paul Dolan comes out and he says, we think we're doing this because people are going to embrace it. The people who fight each day, Clevelanders who fight to save the great tradition of the Cleveland Indians. That's BS, because for years and years and years they considered themselves the mistake on the lake, called themselves the mistake on the lake. The Indians were the least of their worries. And then you risk offending your veteran fan base, which you said, I know there's going to be some veterans of our veteran fans that are not going to like this. Well, why would you want to offend and alienate them? Because they were the people who came and supported you when you sucked and you underachieved all of those years. This makes no sense except for political correctness. And I don't know if you have read this. I read it, wrote it today, and I've written it before. If you go out west where there are real Native Americans living and working, and I know one very well in Montana. He's a rancher, and I hunt birds on his property almost every fall. And if you ask him if he's offended by the Cleveland Indians or the Washington Redskins, he said, I'm offended by the price of cattle. I worry about the price of beef. I watch football on Sundays for entertainment just like everybody else. I don't care what they call themselves.
Well, I'm with you. I do think it's here's the problem with it. It is an effort to please people who will never be pleased. Ever. Because they will not extol your virtue for renaming yourself Guardians. They will lament the fact that before you were the Guardians, you were the Indians. You will never make as many friends as you do enemies with the name change. And the people who watch your games on TV, listen to your games on radio, provide you the ratings to charge your media partners the advertising rates that you do, the people who buy your tickets, buy your gear, show up, support your team, live and die with you, are the people who want that name to be Indians because it has identity to them. It has familiarity to them. It has romance to them from the time they grew up as Indians fans. Some of them will go along. Some of them will be forever alienated by it. And so I don't believe Indians was offensive. They jettisoned the Chief Wahoo label a few years ago. So I think they could have made a very plausible argument that, look, we have made an effort to divest ourselves from the things that were beyond the pale, but Indians is a nod to Native American history and to our history as a baseball team. And everybody's going to be offended about something, and we're not going to change it. And 4 years ago, that was Paul Dolan's exact statement. And that was Rob Manfred's exact statement when they got rid of Chief Wahoo. So what changed? George Floyd got stopped by a cop, lost his life. America became uber sensitive, and we had to change the name. That's what changed. Now, George Floyd has nothing to do with baseball, but those two events are inextricably linked. And so it's an overreaction to a hypersensitive situation. And now they've gone so far they can't go back.
Let me ask you this. If it's so offensive in Cleveland, why isn't it offensive in Fort Laramie or Wapakoneta and St. Henry? Those are all three schools with the nickname Redskins. And I'll give you the answer to that. It's plain and simple, dollars and cents. There's no money there to pursue. Those people are going to say, Bafung, you're out of here. Yeah. Don't come to us with that because, there's just nothing here. Plus, you can't sell any merchandise, nationally. You can't sell a St. Henry jersey or logo in Waterloo, Iowa. It just doesn't matter. Right. So, but it's the same argument. Now, I know they changed the nickname and the logo at Anderson High School. They were the Redskins in Cincinnati. But I had somebody tell me in a spring baseball game this year, that deal is hardly done because, when you change the nickname, you got to go out and change everything else. So then they went door to door in Anderson Township asking people for donations. It's going to cost about $1.4 million to erase the image of the Anderson Redskins from the county and the whole area. They don't have that kind of money. So now they're asking for the community to say, hey, look, we need $1.4 million to forget it ever happened. And people are saying, we're not going to give you that money. And so it's still on the table as to what they're going to do with the Anderson Redskins. So again, if it's as that offensive in Cleveland or Atlanta or Washington, what's the difference between there and St. Henry, Wapakoneta, and Fort Laramie?
Well, the answer is, of course, it's not offensive in Cleveland. It's not offensive in any of those places. Nobody's really offended by it, and nobody's really harmed by language, which is often stated that it's doing violence to someone or doing harm to someone when it's really not. We have a very jaded view of what harm is.
No disagreement, Bruce Hooley, but I think about the bottom line all the time. There's no money in it.
Yeah.
There's simply no money to be had.
Well, Mr. Fulks, now we transition to our Reader Speaks column and the feedback that you got, which was quite robust on your column about summer baseball and the need for summer baseball. And you had some people supportive and some people not supportive.
I was really surprised. We're talking about the piece that I wrote. I don't remember the exact date. Don't have that in front of me, about the last thing I observed in the last game, what I observed in the last game of 2021 that we covered. And that whole week of 15, 16, 17 U baseball, when you ask kids what they like to play best, and so many of them said, given the choice, I'd like to play baseball. When would you like to play it? Do you like to play in March and April? Nobody wants to play in that kind of weather. So when I asked and started canvassing coaches and players and parents and everybody except school administration, and I have asked a number of athletic directors over the years, would you play in June and July if you could, for the sake of the kids? Because every adult that you talk to, from the OHSAA on down, they always give you this hearty handshake, and we're doing this, all we do in the name of the kids. What's best for kids? Well, tell me this. Do you think that asking kids to play 26 baseball games in a window of 6 weeks before the tournament draw in May is doing what's best for kids when it's 38 degrees out there and it's raining sideways and the wind's blowing and it's slick and you risk blowing out an arm or blowing out an ACL or something like that? Or would it be best for kids if you do like they do in Iowa and you play on the 1st of May and you conclude your season on the 4th of July weekend when they have warm, predictable, safe weather and conditions in which to play? They wouldn't do that in football. They wouldn't do it in basketball. They wouldn't ask somebody to go out and play on the playground in the middle of January, outside. No, it's, we're playing inside where everybody's comfortable and it's safe to play. You're not going to slip and fall on a patch of ice. So, there were a lot of people have responded, surprisingly to me, to that argument. Now, we've had people before who have written in and said, yeah, why can't we do that? Why can't we do what they do in Iowa? And let me paint this picture. A lot of people say because baseball is a non-revenue sport, we can't afford the extra time, the busing, the expense, and the manpower and the administration to play in June. Besides that, we got families and we want to be on vacation too during the summer when we can. Now, we're doing this for the good of the kids. Mm-hmm. But these are the arguments. But in Iowa, it's my understanding, I've never been there, never bought a ticket, but they play from May to July. They actually sell tickets to high school baseball. And I've had more than one administrator in Johnson County, Iowa, where Iowa City is, as you know, tell me, yeah, we sell lots of tickets. It actually pays for itself because people come out on good, warm, pleasant evenings to watch baseball. So we sell tickets. It's not a non-revenue sport. But in the Reader Speaks column, I want to share this with you. We had a number of people who wrote in. We had one person, Jerry Schneider, who said the obvious solution is playing it in the summer. Why not have an independent administration? Why do you need an OHSAA to have a state champion? No different from Legion and Acme baseball. But the best one we had was this one from Adam Belleville. I don't know Adam. I don't remember now where he lives. But he wrote and said, quote, if you want to know how much baseball means to the OHSAA, consider the expansion of the football playoffs and follow the money. They always talk, and he capitalized always. Mm-hmm. They always talk about creating more opportunities for kids with football. They never, capitalizing never, talk about creating more opportunities for kids through baseball. That I've never had a more compelling statement or an opinion rendered by a reader than that one. You know, and Doug Ute was on here, and he said, we want to create more opportunities for kids through football by expanding the playoffs.
Yep.
Did he not?
He did say that. Yep.
Have you ever heard anyone out there listening to me tonight? Have you ever heard anyone say they want to create more opportunities for kids through summer baseball? The answer to that is no. So, Adam Belville, we appreciate your opinion, and you're sharing that with us, and we couldn't agree with you more. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's I think something they don't want to deal with in the summertime. I think the administrators want their summers to be free, and I think they also want those guys to be able to play club sports in the summertime. They want them to be able to play, you know, basketball. The AAU circuit is big in the summertime and things like that. But in terms of would it be best for the sport of baseball, unquestionably it would be. Get the kids out of the freezing temperatures, and you wouldn't have to compress so many games because of rainouts and things like that.
I had a high school coach tell me this week, he called me and he said, you're killing me by writing this stuff about summer baseball. He said, my 5 best athletes are chasing some impossible dream by playing summer baseball. They think they're going to get a scholarship that doesn't exist. He said, I wish you would just give it up because I need those kids in camp to be ready for opening night in football.
Well, but here's one thing I would say, 2 things I would say. Number one, he doesn't know that they're never going to get a baseball scholarship. There aren't as many baseball scholarships as there are football scholarships. But the other thing is that that's their prerogative to chase a baseball scholarship.
Of course it is.
They love the sport.
Of course it is.
You know, they get to pick what they want to play. So that's none of that guy's business.
But you talk about competition for athletes, and there has always been competition for athletes. There's always been, there always will be. Because in the same breath, we say, we want you to play multiple sports. And that's good. Play football, basketball, baseball, whatever you want to play. Golf, I don't care. Whatever you want to play. But don't make your sport such a priority that you say, hey, look, if you're not here for summer camp, you're not going to start a quarterback for us in September. Even if you were the starter last year, even if you have the most experience on the field, look, you got to be here. You got to be lifting with everybody else. You got to be a teammate. It's all for one and one for all. And you put that kind of pressure on kids, which some coaches would tell you that's why a lot of kids are dropping out of competitive sports altogether, is because it's just not fun when you have to make a choice.
Yeah. Anything else from the Reader Speaks that you want to highlight, or shall we bid everyone a happy Monday and let them get the rest of their night back?
Well, that's the 2 best ones, unless you want to consider the one where, can I ask where you got the Jumbotron picture of Mike DeWine? This is from Rob Courtney.
Oh, yeah, let's cover that one, yes. This is Jumbotron picture from Mike DeWine.
This is from Rob Courtney in Central Ohio, the Jumbotron photo of Mike DeWine. What's the story behind it, or is it something created in Photoshop? And I wrote back and I said, well, sadly, it's not something that it might have been created in Photoshop, but it really did happen. And you were there. No, we did not do it. You were there. You saw it during the New Bremen and Warren JFK Division VII championship game last year when they stopped the game in the 3rd quarter because the New Bremen people were all huddled up on the 50-yard line to get the best seat possible to watch the game. They were winning. They were into the moment. And they stopped the game and said, you got to disperse. You got to exhibit social distancing or else. And they didn't say what or else meant.
I'm watching.
Suddenly, on the scoreboard, here's this photo of Mike DeWine pointing in his eyes like, my eyes are on you. I'm watching your every move. It was kind of a chilling glass of water on the moment, if you will.
Yeah.
Throwing water on the fire on the party, but it really did happen, Rob, and we were there to see it. Nobody ever took credit for putting that up. Now, my understanding was later that the governor's office claimed no responsibility, did not call and say, we're watching, we saw what was going on, and that was our directive to spread everybody out. It's just somebody took it upon themselves, I think, at Paul Brown Stadium to do it. Handy with Photoshop probably to create that, because I can't believe Mike DeWine would ever have said, take my picture doing this and then put it on a Jumbotron during a state championship football game.
No, nor can I believe that the OHSAA cooked that up. I will probably never get the true Hollywood story behind the origination of that photo, but my guess is it was a couple Massillon Tiger people who had access to the Jumbotron and thought it'd be a good joke to throw up there at some point in time. I guess I'm just surprised they did it on the first day of the state championships and not on Saturday or Sunday. I know it was up there Saturday as well, but I don't know if it ever made an appearance on Sunday.
I only saw it the one time. If it was up there the second time, I didn't see it the second time.
It was up there Saturday. It was definitely up there Saturday.
I just snapped the photo of it, and I never realizing it would get that much attention.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly lived on, like unfortunately the pandemic threatens to. Today, the Ohio Department of Health recommended masks for kids 12 and under, but Mike DeWine said clearly there is not an appetite in the state of Ohio for a mask mandate, and he is absolutely correct on that. And so I can't imagine he'll move off of that, because unlike last year at this time, he is facing a much closer in proximity primary election upcoming, and that would probably not be good for his campaign. So I don't think we'll have a mask mandate this fall, and hopefully we'll not have big COVID numbers, and we'll get back out to life as usual, covering games as we like to do, and writing about them and photographing them on PressProsMagazine.com.
I don't think there will ever be another appetite for that.
No. With you on that, 100%. Brad confirms that the Mike DeWine, I'm watching you, was up during the Coldwater game. So
okay, so I
knew it had to be. I knew it had to be, because that was the game I saw it. So
well, you know what? If it was up more than once, then that had to be an administrative decision by at least not acknowledged by the OHSAA. So it wasn't just a one-time prank. But I didn't see it during the Coldwater game.
Well, you were busy photographing one of the all-time great games we've ever seen in high school football history. That Coldwater win was phenomenal. So we're looking forward to seeing more of the Cavaliers this fall and all the teams that we cover. And we want to thank all of the sponsors who make that possible. You want to tell people where you bought that refrigerator today?
We got that from Westrick Furniture in Delphi, St. John. You know, you can't do better than go up there, because let me tell you something. I walked in there, and, you know, it's hard to get merchandise. And if somebody's out there trying to buy appliances or a car or something right now, there's a lot of empty spots in the showroom and on the lot. I walked into Westrick's today, and here was a room, a wall-to-wall of choices to pick from. So that's quality, when you can walk in and find somebody that has the forethought to say, hey, if it gets tight and it gets hard to get, let's order a year in advance to make sure we have it when people need it. So Westrick has been a great sponsor with us for many, many, many years, and our thanks to Chad and Jack Westrick there for their support and their friendship. It's a good place to do business.
Absolutely. And if you're out and about and you see a Press Pros sponsor in their business, thank them for their support of our site and what we do. We love what we do, and we love that you guys love what we do, and our numbers prove that. And we want to thank all of you who watched us live tonight, all of you who are catching us on the replay. We will continue to populate the site with stories ramping up toward what will be an outstanding fall season. And with that, Mr. Fulks, I know you want to wish Truman a good night.
Good night's sleep. But let me share one more thing with you. The gentleman that I did business with today, and he wrote me up, is celebrating his 70th year working for Westrick.
Wow.
He has been there since I think Jack told me, since Jim is his name, don't know his last name, been there since he was 14 years old.
Wow. That's awesome.
So
I will not be with you.
What an incredible story. Another reason why, you know, sometimes it's just good to buy local.
I like you a lot, and I like what I do for Press Pros, but I can guarantee you I will not be working for you for 70 years.
Nor would I want you to.
All right, everybody. With that, have a great night. Enjoy the replay. Tell your friends about the show. Tell your friends about the site. And have a good evening. We'll talk to you again next week.